Genshin Impact. It's a game that's been out for a few weeks now, and for the past week I've dunked a good amount of time into this game, and I'm here to tell you my first impressions. First things first, performance-wise, this game performs pretty well. I run it on a i9 with a GTX 1080, and it can run at a smooth 4K 60 FPS pretty much all the time. And even on mobile, I sometimes play on an iPad Air. It can run on 720p, 30 FPS, and it runs perfectly fine. And also the mobile controls are fine. They're good. They work. Now, for some surface level stuff, the graphics and music of this game are pretty gorgeous. I mean, if you've seen anything, it's something that'll blow you away at first, but it's a novelty that slowly wears off. And it wore off decently fast for me. Within this week, the game's graphics and music kind of stopped impressing me, mainly because apart from the initial impression, they don't really go further. They don't really show spectacle pieces or have places where the music goes off. But I'll talk more about that in the gameplay section. Overall, I just think the color palette is a bit dull as you move forward, especially because of the environment. It's all very copy and pasted, kind of like an Assassin's Creed game, but the color palette and the variation here is even less, making the world just kind of feel dull. I wouldn't say empty, because they fill it with a lot of things and activities, but they just all feel like they don't fit in quite as well as something like an Assassin's Creed game, one of those Ubisoft open world games. But just because the overall environment might be a bit dull, that doesn't mean that there aren't good places in the environment. This is a map where it's a lot of bland stuff, but there are specific pinpoints of set environments that look really good, and those are great. I just wish that the transition periods in between weren't as dull. I think the gameplay of this game is also very okay. I think the element system it has, the combo system, is pretty interesting. It's like Anthem system, but if you go a step above and beyond and introduce 7 total elements that interact with each other in cool ways. They're not just like fire counters wood. No, they actually interact with each other, and I think that's pretty good. Although the average sword play of this game, it feels a bit hollow and detached. It would be something I think I would compare it to the feeling of a MOBA character more than your average third-person action-adventure like Jedi Fallen Order or Souls-like. The moves here are just very basic, and the hits are fine. Nothing about this combat is super satisfying, but it works just fine. I don't think it's horrible. Something that I don't really enjoy about this game is definitely the traversal. The stamina bar in this game does not feel good to play with. It's limited, but I don't know. It's just, it regenerates so slowly, and you have such a little bit, even though it definitely improves as you build up that stamina bar. But traversal in this game just never really feels good. The gliding is very meh, and the swimming and climbing are also just very rudimentary and basic. However, I do think that in this game, there is a pretty good and interesting world. It's definitely has some fantasy anime vibes, so if that's what you're into, if you want to be dropped into a fantasy anime world, then this game is pretty good with that. And also all the characters in the game are pretty well done. Their dialogue is pretty good. Nothing amazing, but everything about this world story is just kind of delightful. Now, this is a gacha game, and it's free to play, so there's the gacha elements. And by gacha elements, I don't just mean the loot box pulls. I also mean that it's a game that will flood you, like gacha games, if you ever played one, it's a game that will flood you with a lot of stuff at the beginning and then slowly turn off that loot that you're initially drowned with. And then later, the progression will be much harder and much more stagnant, and you'll have to do a lot more of grinding to actually progress. There is level gating in this game between main story quests, which I think it's fine, because it's a free-to-play game, unlike, Anthem, or a bunch of artificial level gating that Ubisoft games have been doing. And in between these big, cool story missions, there are also nice side quests. They're not anything amazing, but I think they're on the pretty good side of side quests. I played quite a few Ubisoft open world games, and I can definitely say that the side quests here are most of the times better than the side quests you get there. One thing that I think the game does quite poorly is probably the multiplayer, which is extremely scuff, because it works as people join a main player session, and the other players can't really progress, can't really mine anything in that main player's world when in their session. So it's just kind of not a great feeling when you're just not able to open chests or collect anything in the world in someone else's session. Really, the multiplayer serves to tackle specific large challenges, which, okay, but I can't say that I'm not a little bit disappointed, because the multiplayer is fun. When you actually get to the combat and comboing everything with your teammates, that's fun. The issue is just that you can't explore the world with your teammates and just do everything together with friends. Finally, I want to talk about the character improvements. There's the leveling up and artifacts and weapon improvements, all of that. Great stuff. There's a lot of customization to your character. The weapons all have pretty powerful and unique perks, and they can be upgraded, infused, refined, combined, all of that. There's a great system in there, so I think that's pretty good, and it's pretty fun to tweak with. It's not shallow at all. There's a lot of depth. So yeah, those are just some of my overall impressions of Genshin Impact after playing it for about a week. It's a game, for what it's worth, which is free, by the way. It is definitely a worthwhile game to try out. But of course, the gacha elements might not be for everyone, but if you want to really dedicate yourself to this game, you definitely can. So yeah, personally, with not a lot of time to dedicate to anything, I probably won't be grinding this game 24/7, but it's definitely a game that I'll come back to once in a while, and because of this, how this game system is, where it's kind of a live service game. So I can't wait to see what else they can bring to the table, what improvements they have, and what new territories they introduce that hopefully addresses the issues of this current map that we have. So yeah, that's Genshin Impact. Enjoy.